Well, I guess the waiting is almost done in this season. Christmas Eve is coming. There's still a lot I know to be done, so I encourage you to take a moment this morning to rest and to breathe. Take a break for a second and try to continue to remember what this season is about. I know for us, it's been full of unexpected things, and I think that's part of our world. Bonnie and I were talking before the service about the place of flexibility in our lives at all times, correct? How's your flexibility doing today? The unexpected. We were reading some letters yesterday that came in cards, and one of my treasured friends from long ago, Eleanor, wrote. I've mentioned her many times because she has an extremely blessed and wonderful, gifted and challenged young adult that she's raising. And she wrote to say, well, Gina's doing well, and Rod and I are fine, and unexpectedly we have an adopted young woman from Ukraine living with us. Our lives have changed a little bit. But boy, isn't it exciting to have an 18-year-old lady in your house. Period. She gave me no more information on this. How did this happen? The unexpected of discovering my friend not only raising this beautiful, beautiful 21-year-old child, but also she's raising and being engaged and taking care of a young girl from the Ukraine living in the United States. The unexpected. Today, we have a little bit of an unexpected guest. We're looking at Joseph, and we only get to see Joseph about once every 3 years when the scripture cycles around to Matthew. But most of the time, like Anne Weems in her poem talks about, why is it we always put Joseph in the back of the stable? We know so much more about Mary. We know about angels. We know about glory to God. But this morning we have a guest with us, and it's Joseph. And he brings to us a very different story this morning. Matthew's very brief. Did you notice that? You can get your Bibles out of the pews there. Chapter 1, don't have to look far in Matthew. It's just a few verses. Usually Christmas we turn to Luke because there's the shepherds and the glory, and there's the nativity and the baby, and there's so much that's spelled out there of wonder. But Matthew is pretty brief, and I think there's intense purpose to his brevity. He starts with, this is how it took place. I think it's like a record, a recording, a written recording that he's made in a matter-of-fact manner, that this is how Jesus came into the world. Something that most of the universe did not see or know. The vast world of Rome and its empires took no note of this. It was just something that happened, the birth of a child. And Matthew brings that to us in the brevity of this passage this morning. And another unexpected thing comes to us here. If we take a look at the birth of the Christ child by Matthew, we discover that he was full of a lot of challenging thoughts and works and turmoil about decision-making. I don't know about you, I never had turmoil or thoughts deep in the dark at 3 a.m. about making decisions about my life. How about you? Any late, oh, there was a chuckle on that one. Yep, late night soul searching. Yep, guess what? It's here in the story of the birth of Christ. So for a moment, it's put into Matthew, and at the beginning of the first chapter of Matthew is this long genealogy, real long, like a whole page of genealogy, and one must ask why. And guess what? There were no DNA tests back then. There was no finding your roots with Professor Gates. The only way to know your genealogy was to have it verbally first recorded. You knew the stories. So great, 14 greats, Uncle Jacob, and 16 great-greats was Abraham. The lineage goes back, clearly establishing Joseph, Mary, and Jesus to come as being part of a family, and part of a Jewish family. Roots back to Abraham. And if you please look at this later, because there's 2 women mentioned. It's all men. until you get to two foreigners. One is Rahab, an innkeeper in Jericho, who played a key role in the beginning of Israel in saving a group of folks spying out the land. And then Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite. She was not of Israel. So two women in the lineage that bring to us this interesting picture that Jesus' family was just like ours. Now, my uncle may not have been a Moabite, but I'll tell you, Uncle Ike was a character. I mentioned him once before because he liked to be in the trade of rum and alcohol during the period of time when that was not kosher. He was busted, and his older brother ran out and bought every paper in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to try to prevent his family from knowing what his brother had done. Guess what? Jesus' family has those scallywags too. Wily characters. People that were confused. There's wise folks that were in his family. There are these two interesting women and their stories. But the genealogy goes from Abraham to the exile. It says 14 generations. From the exile to the current time, another 14 generations. Slap dab, we get a sense of who Jesus is, a Jewish boy in a family that has a long history of God's faithful acts. So two of them, to pull out two for a moment, one of the amazing great-great-greats back there was Uncle Jacob. And he was the one that fled having stolen a birthright, finds himself sleeping in the desert and finds a pillow that he lays his head upon. And he sees up and down the ladder from heaven, angels descending and ascending. And he says, surely God is in this place. A little later, he wrestles with an angel, seeking a blessing. And once he has that blessing, he lets go of the angel. Joseph, Jacob's nephew, he was the one of whom there's 10 chapters in Genesis, found himself trafficked by his brothers, living in Egypt as a slave. While jailed there, he becomes the one who interprets dreams. And this is the man that Pharaoh hears about, who helps Pharaoh in the midst of his night of the soul struggles to figure out what it means. Joseph rises in rank until he is the lead person that ends up saving Israel. Joseph, Jacob, in Joseph's background, and I think Joseph's namesake. It goes way back to that. So we bring it to this. Joseph is betrothed to Mary, which was a legal agreement, legally binding. This is important to see, a legal happening. And he discovers that Mary is pregnant, and he has not been involved in this process. So he's quite torn because he must make a decision. Will he follow through on being with this woman? Yet he knows the law is straight and strong on this. If she is with child, he must do one of two things. He must bring publicly before everybody what is happening, and she would bear the shame. And this would be an instant message of poverty, of a woman raising a child, and possibly being stoned. Or his second choice was this, in this legal obligation. He could quietly divorce her and put her to the side. This would still lead to devastation for Mary, a young girl. Who would marry her? So I see him claiming that table, getting ready, because it's the wedding gift that he'd been working on for a long time. He's working on it, and it is the best therapy he's ever known, because he doesn't know what to do. He's working on the table. This was the gift. I cannot believe how unexpected this moment is in my life. What will I do? What will I do? I have choices to make. Interesting. Choices comes through in this passage. And the night of the soul, he's worked so hard that with exhaustion, he's finally fallen asleep. Good news, there weren't sleeping pills to take in that day because he would have missed something very important in his night's sleep. As he rests, What comes to him is a message from God through an angel. It's a dream. It's a visitation. Not only was Mary visited, but also Joseph was visited. And here were the words, holy mackerel. Not holy mackerel. Here were the words, I am with you. Don't be afraid. So I started this morning a page on the fears that I wrestle with. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through them all for you. The unexpected that happens in our lives, the decisions we make, and the fearful things we step into. My children may be adults. That doesn't mean this isn't gray hair underneath this coloring. We worry. We spend some nights up concerned. Yes, our daughter-in-law's brother did die this week. We are going to set a different tone for our time together. The unexpected breaks into our lives, as we well know. Lon tells a great story of his father making decisions at work that meant he was going to have to quit because quality control was deep in his heart, and he wouldn't work there if quality control was broken. But that changed everything for everybody. Moves in the future, other jobs to find. I think of my brother David going back to school, having healed from wounds in Vietnam. And he made a decision to go back north to go to school, bringing his family that had never been out of the South before, up to northern climes, and boy, was it a hard time. The angel says, don't be afraid. This is in the hands of God, says the angel. You're part of the family, says an angel, that goes way back to Abraham in the beginning, and God has surely been in that place all the time. And God is surely here with you now. He is visited in the middle of the night, and he hears those words that we need to hear, that come to us this season in our fear-ridden world. Can't turn one direction without coming up against something. Fear not, I am with you, and I've always been with you, and I'm gonna be with you. Only now a special thing's going to happen, and Joseph, you're going to be a part of it by taking Mary, by holding her. So Joseph, in the middle of law, discovers relationship really is what at the heart of Torah. The heart of Torah was always a relationship with God and love. And Joseph sees once again through this visitant, through this angel, that yes, love is first. So I can imagine years later when Joseph is working and Jesus is holding a lamp. We have a picture not easy to see. They're talking all along. You know that's what fathers and sons do when they're working. Jesus is holding a lamp so Joseph can see the work he's doing. And I can hear Jesus saying, tell me that story one more time about how you took my mother. How you've always said, the law says this, but I say this. Tell me again, Father, about that. Well, the law said to put your mother aside, but I say, the law also says, love. Love, relationship. And I think later, Jesus uses that phrase often in his ministry. He says, you have heard the law say, but I say. You know, he began to learn that at the feet of his children, his father and his mother, who had this story. Can you imagine Mary's heart? Because the text then goes, he awoke, action verbs, he awoke. He took Mary to his home to be a wife. He went to her home, he knocked on the door. He said, we're going through this. I've got a table waiting at home that I've been working on. Come home. He took her to be wife in the face of everything everybody would say about this. He embraces her, and he's the one that names Jesus, as had been told in a dream. Jesus, the one who came to save. And the text ends, Emmanuel, God is with us. And so through Joseph, we have this wonderful witness. Don't put him in the back of your manger anymore. Put him out front. Envision him standing there guarding this child. taking up the baby when Mary was exhausted, walking with him as fathers do, holding him, looking at him, and saying, "Son, our love will take care of you." So how will we carry this story out? Hanukkah starts tonight. And there's one candle that lights all the candles, the candelabra, and it's the shamash. It's the first candle. That will be lit tonight. How will we be that candle taking that light out beyond these walls? Because we continue to hear news that the world needs. Be not afraid. I am with you. Surely God is in this place. How will we bear this news to the world? And I'm always saying in simple ways, little ways. Maybe it's picking up the trash. Others of those notes are, have you written a note to a family member lately just saying, "Hello, I love you"? Have you called someone and said, "Hello, I'm thinking of you"? The simple small acts of being the light, of taking forth good news that we are not alone and don't be afraid. We have an opportunity in our limited ways, our human ways, and all that we know of conditional love. We're given the opportunity to be a gateway of unlimited and unconditional love, which is what has come and is come to us. So we know the unexpected will happen this week. You betcha. I don't know if there's snow. I think we're safe on that level, but I should be very quiet about that. You never know. Unexpected will happen. But the good news is, God knows that. That's built into Scripture. Unexpected will happen. And therefore, all the more to hear the words, good news. Surely, God is in this place and goes with us. Let's pause for a moment to pray. Lord, we are in awe of your commitment to the relationship with all of your creation, to be present, to be here, to be throughout the world, where there is war and where there is panic and where there is fear and tragedy. You are present. Please continue to be faithful about that. And help us to see the ways, the small ways, in which we can share the light these next days and into the new year and be sustained through the unexpected by the good news of your presence. Hear us, Lord, and we love you, and it's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.